Hi, everybody. My name is Ruth Rumack, and welcome to our Assistive Technology webinar. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're really excited. I'm excited because I get to share this webinar with Victoria Hunter, who has been with Ruth Rumack's Learning Space for a long time, Victoria, hasn't it? Oh, you're on mute.
Of course. Yes, I've been with Ruth Rumack for almost 9 years at this point, currently serving as the director of intake. So I meet a lot of our new students coming in and getting them settled with their teachers.
It's very exciting. And the best thing, I think, from your position is you see all the kids coming in, or many, not all of them, but many of them. And you also work with our students, and you've worked with assistive technology for a very long time. So we're definitely in good hands tonight for our conversation. And while we're waiting for just a few more people to arrive at the webinar, I'd love you, our attendees, to put into the chat what ages your children are and whether they are in a public school or a private school. Just give me a little bit of idea of who you are and the kids that you're here, or maybe you're here for yourself and you're trying to get information for yourself. So I'd love to get a little sense of who's out there, and that way we can really speak to our audience as opposed to just talking blindly. So Sheila's got age 13, grade 8 at TDSB. Thank you. Katrin, son is 8, public school, grade 3. Sean says 18 and 12, each type of school, so a private and a public. DDSB, excellent. And who else? Jacob, my kids are 13, 16, 18, special ed for 18-year-old, all private. Thank you. Sharon, I guess that's Sharon. Hi, my daughter is 9. This is from Lisa. Moved to a private school with kids with learning disabilities this year. Excellent. Catherine saying age 10, TDSB French immersion. We're going to talk a little bit about French immersion in there as well, which is good to know. We've got some audience members who have that on their mind. It's a little bit different in a French immersion program, but we'll talk about that as we get going. And what else do we have? Simone says 13-year-old daughter with ADD in TDSB. So many acronyms.
A lot of middle school and high schoolers I'm seeing here.
This is good. This is good because I think so much of what we're going to share tonight is really aimed at giving students the tools to be able to be independent. It doesn't happen right away, and they need practice, and they need monitoring and reflection and figuring out what works best. But once they get the skill, it becomes quite natural. And we see kids on their phones and on their tablets and on their computers all the time, and they're swiping and doing stuff that we don't even know how to do or what they're doing. Well, I'm speaking for myself. I have a 13-year-old at home and a 30-year-old at home. So I see it on both ends. Who else? Julie says 11-year-old boys in TDSB. Excellent. So we've got a good mix of TDSB, other public schools, and private schools too. All right. So if you've just joined us, go ahead and pop into the chat the ages of the children you're thinking of tonight and which school board they're in, and we're going to get started. Let's do it. We're going to share the screen. I will tell you first a little bit about myself. My name is Ruth Rumack. That's me there. My background is in psychology and in education, and I started Ruth Rumack's Learning Space, oh my goodness, like 25 years ago, a quarter of a century ago now. And we work with students one-on-one. We have a direct instruction pedagogy, which means that we're really explicit and thorough in the way that we present the information. We take into account all of the students' needs and challenges, as well as what they are really fantastic at. So we look at their what makes them successful as well. We have wonderful one-on-one instruction with a whole host of incredible educators who are all certified teachers and very experienced working with students who have varying learning challenges, ADHD, Asperger's, or on the spectrum of all kinds. And we really believe in a multimodal and a multisensory learning experience. So we want to get the kids up and moving and doing and using all of the senses and all of the different parts of the brain to really make information interesting and stick. All right, let's look at the next part. So this, I always come back to this picture because I really identify with the smallest person in the picture in each of the boxes. I'm only 5 feet tall. And when we talk about, appropriate universal design and technology, we want to talk about what isn't necessarily fair for one person or another, but we're talking about accessibility and doing what we can to make everybody successful. Fair isn't to get everybody getting the same thing, because not everybody needs the same thing, but fair is allowing each child to be successful in their own way and giving them the tools and the skills that they need to do it. A lot of school is showing what you know. And if you can't show what you know because perhaps of a dysgraphia, a writing challenge, or maybe a reading challenge, or maybe a comprehension challenge or a math challenge, if you can't explain that you know what you've been taught, then it's very difficult for teachers and educators to give you credit for that. So having a universal design, which means it's good for everybody or it's available to everybody, and working in or using technology to further that is really, we're so lucky right now, I think, in our day and age, that we can actually access all of this incredible stuff, both online and within our computers, our tablets, our phones, any type of screen that we're using. And we have the opportunity to use it in a way that is very, very productive. And it can actually be an entire game changer, a life changer for many of our students. Okay, let's take a look at the next slide. So what is assistive technology? We call it AT for short. Generally, it is considered any technology that benefits someone with a diagnosed learning challenge. And the assistive technology supports students to work around the challenge in order to better communicate and learn. And as I was saying before, that's showing what you know. Now, the interesting thing is that AT can be very helpful for all learners. You don't have to have a diagnosed learning challenge in order to be able to use it effectively and productively. But when you do have some diagnosed challenges, you want to have access to this technology because it's just going to make your life a whole lot easier and reduce anxiety, reduce frustration, and allow you to really be productive. Let's take a look at the next one. I'm going to talk to one other point, which is the fact that so much technology is available for free. And a lot of technology is actually available through the school boards and private schools at no cost to the student, or perhaps at a low cost to the student. And sometimes a parent may have to invest in certain tools in order to build the toolkit so that their child can really be successful. We want to talk a little bit about the background, the research. And we know that early intervention is best, as it is with most things. If you catch something early and you can make learning in a certain way using a certain tool, a habit, and it becomes something that you practice and you get really good at, and it becomes seamless in your arsenal of educational tools, it's something that can really make a significant step forward for a student, and set them up for success lifelong, not just academically. Let's take a look at the next one. So how does it actually help? We're going to talk a little bit about many different types of technology out there, really targeting specific learning challenges and needs. But let's take a look. We've touched on some of these points already, that it allows a student to actually reach and show their full potential. And many students without these tools would not be able to do that. We can also look at a student's strengths and capitalize on their strengths in order to minimize or build on their weaker areas, which is really important. And students gain more confidence, and confidence is key. Confidence is everything. When a student feels that they can do something, they are more engaged, they're more excited, and they want to do it. So there's less frustration and there's less resistance. I want to look at the quote here. It says, assistive technology helps in two ways. It can help the student learn how to complete a task, and it can help bypass an area of difficulty. So when a student, for example, if they have a reading challenge, listens to a book, they could listen to it on just through headphones. I would call it a book on tape, but that of course shares with you how old I am, and I'm trying to avoid that phrasing lately. So, but if they're listening to the story, it's one thing. They're getting the information, and it's helpful because they're accessing it faster. But if they are using assistive technology, they're using a screen that actually highlights the words as they are reading or as the voice is reading, then the brain is actually doing two things. It's taking in the information and comprehending the information in a different way. And it's also actually visually stimulating the brain in a way that will allow the student to recognize more words later on, as well as to be able to hear how an unfamiliar word may be pronounced and use that skill later on. And also it helps with spelling and reading fluency. So using assistive technology is not a crutch. It's not something that is for lazy students that, you know, they're just gonna, it's a way out of doing it in a traditional way. It is actually working to help the brain gain more skills in an area of deficit. So before we go on, I'm talking a mile a minute here because I'm very excited about assistive technology, but I would love to hear from you out there to share if your child has used assistive technology before, if maybe you're new to it and you're just starting to get an understanding of what it is. Give me a little indication of where your kids are in their journey with assistive technology, or, you know, the area that you're looking for support in. We can throw that into the chat. I'm going to add the last one. Liza said that her 12-year-old boy just switched to a private school in September. So, oh, Char says brand new. Ooh, yay, that's exciting because we've got so much to share. I love that. Anybody else? Where are you at? We've only started using speech to text, so we're pretty new. Excellent, because we're going to, again, share lots of interesting things with you. 10-year-old, Catherine says her 10-year-old uses Read and Write, which is a fabulous program that is available through pretty much every school, both private and public. And we use it all the time. We've been using it for ages. In fact, when they first introduced the technology, we have a contact there who is coming in and giving us sort of secret lessons, giving us the inside scoop, which was really great. All right, what else do we have here? Sheila says son uses a C-claim computer, which means that the school has provided him with a computer to use, and with an LD. Okay, excellent. And what else? Oh, Simone says brand new as well. Oh, I love it. Victoria, we've got so many newbies. This is so good. What else? Jacob, not that new, however, it didn't stick. So that's an interesting comment, because technology is something that you do need to practice. And it's not as though a student can just be given the information or given a program on the computer and a quick overview and then sent off on their own. This is a learned skill, and you have to learn how to use it for yourself, which parts are most helpful, which parts aren't as helpful. But it takes time, and it is a process. So we have to be patient, and we have to keep reintroducing either the same concepts or sometimes, you know, a little chunk of one concept and then add in something else. Sheila says Google Classroom is a big help. Absolutely. I mean, I think that's one of those universal design things where, you know, it helps everybody, teachers, parents, and students included. Okay. Oh, I've got a few more messages. My goodness, I love it. There's so much conversation already. I'm probably missing some, but let's just see. Oh, Liza says, my son had a bad experience with how AT was integrated in public school system. He felt he was made different than others, and to this day refuses to use it. School did not share with us what they were teaching him, so it was difficult, to do any. That's tough. That is really tough. When a student has had a negative experience to begin with, it is, you know, human nature to not want to go there again. However, you know, perhaps in a different setting, maybe in a private setting, maybe in a situation where it's one-to-one, maybe where he sees the benefit of it first before attempting it himself, maybe we can kind of get him to buy in a little bit. And Sheila says, waiting on instruction for voice to text. Well, we're going to talk to you more about that as well. And also, Kate says, also use, is that Office 365? I think so, with, now I've lost it. with my college students. Oh, excellent. Yes, I'm glad that that's helpful for them. And Julie just discovered Speechify for my 11-year-old so he can read at night before bed. Oh, I've got some beautiful stories about students reading what they say by themselves for the first time. Kids who were 11 and 12 who had reading challenges, who, for the first time in their lives, because of a text to voice software, were able to read the books that their peers were reading and came in beaming the next morning because they could actually talk about the chapter in a meaningful way with their classmates. So some amazing, amazing success stories there. Yes. And Catherine, booklet teaches my son math. I wonder if it's what it's Blookit. No, oh goodness, we just talked about this in our staff meeting today, Victoria. What's it called?
Yeah, Blookit has some great math games.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, was there anything else, Ruth, before I go on, or?
No, I think we're good. Okay, I'm handing it over to you.
So we're going to go into the part sort of talking about the different types of assistive tech tools. And, you know, these may be things that, you know, maybe they were mentioned on your child's psych ed and you're not quite sure what they are. Or maybe, like some of you said, that your child has received some training on it at school, but you're not quite sure, you know, how it works and how to support them with it at home. I often, when I speak to students, find that, you know, students may have had 1 or 2 training sessions at school, and then they're kind of just expected to use it independently, and they're not quite sure how to go about, you know, integrating it with their homework and that sort of thing. So that's what we do, a lot of supporting students sort of with that sort of training aspect, helping families understand how to use these different tools. So we'll take you through some of the major ones and how we like to use them. So probably the most common one that a lot of people know is the text-to-speech technology, or it's sometimes called read aloud or read back. And it does exactly what it sounds like. You know, it basically reads text aloud to you. And this can be really great. You know, we all love sort of audiobooks, but those aren't always, you know, available for every type of text you might need to encounter in school. So, you know, if a student has a textbook or, you know, a handout or a PDF short story that they need to read for school, this is where the text-to-speech technology can really come in and support them. And as Ruth mentioned before, you know, it's been proven that if you're sort of like looking at the text as well as listening to it being read aloud to you, it will actually work on improving the fluency and comprehension for the student. So really great for students who do have a reading challenge, but it can also be really great for, you know, also supporting efficiency when we're trying to get through a massive amount of reading for homework. If we can listen, it just sort of speeds up that process, and then students can sort of focus instead on maybe like annotating or highlighting or making notes as they're kind of listening to the text. So it can help in a number of different ways. So there are a few different ways, we can go on to the next slide. There's a few different ways we can kind of access this text-to-speech technology. So there are sort of programs that you can download onto your computer. So Read and Write is one example of this. There is a type of it that you can download onto the Mac or PC. There's also well-known programs like WordQ. Kurzweil was a big one. We don't see it as much anymore, but it is, you know, it is one of these programs that has a lot of different features within it, and you can add it to your computer. And then surprisingly, even just programs that, you know, the average person might be using, like Adobe Reader, actually has built-in text-to-speech. So the wonderful thing is that we're finding more and more, you know, these types of technologies are being built into computers, iPads, you know, just making them more accessible to everybody. So with that built-in category there, we see like the Apple Readback. So, you know, there is a way you can kind of turn it on in your Mac. There's accessibility features. You can just turn them on, and then you can have, you know, different programs read aloud to you. Microsoft has the same with Cortana. So yeah, most computers and tablets these days have a sort of built-in text-to-speech tool that can be turned on. You just have to sort of look in your settings and figure out how to turn it on. And then there's also the web-based programs. So the main one that has become really the most popular program these days, I would say, is Read and Write for Google Chrome. So this is what's typically used by all the school boards and most of the private schools as well. And it's really great because you just add it as a little extension to Google Chrome, and then you can kind of access it whenever you're signed into your Google account, and you can use it all across the web on web pages in Google Docs. So it's really, really great. It has a lot of great tools. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So Read and Write, we'll show you actually a little video of how the reading tools work in this program. So if you want to just play the video, it's perfect.
We can't hear it. Maybe our video is on mute. Let's give it a try again. We're working from 3 parties, 3 different areas. So give us a second and you'll see it in action. Joelle's working hard to get it to go.
You could try the subtitles too if it's not.
We're gonna try again. While we're waiting for that, I'm gonna say that many of our teachers actually, while they're working with us, are pursuing their master's or a second master's, and many of them, or additional qualifications in education. And many of our teachers will actually use this program to help them get through the volume of reading that they need to accomplish, especially after a long day of work. I know several of our teachers who use the voice to the text to voice in order to get through their own homework. And it was really effective and really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a couple other things I can say about Read and Write. So yeah, it is available as a download, as we said, or as the Chrome extension. And there's a couple of different ways. Oh, let's see. Are we going to get it to work or no?
Give it a try. We'll try one more time.
Once you have downloaded the Read and Write extension, it follows you through any website that you go to within your Chrome browser. To activate it, you simply click on the extension and the toolbar will drop down. Read and Write offers 3 different ways to access the text-to-speech tools. You can choose to use the hover speech tool, highlight and press play, or the screenshot reader. Today, I'm going to demonstrate how to use the easiest of the 3, which is highlight and press play.
Our certified and highly trained learning specialists use direct instruction pedagogy, Orton-Gillingham principles, and multisensory activities to help students achieve and surpass their grade-level reading skills.
You can press pause at any time or stop to stop the readback entirely. If you dislike the voice or the speed, you can change that as well. All you need to do is click Options, change the voice. I really like UK English Serena. And you can change the speed with which she reads. I don't typically recommend going below 40 or above 60. However, all students are different.
This highly effective approach involves teaching literacy skills using a strategic and systematic method until students master the concepts, moving up and beyond grade-level expectations. Direct instruction is delivered using cutting-edge and dynamic methods that are tailored to individual learning styles and ensure students' engagement.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, so some students, I think maybe people mentioned there, but some students will say that they struggle with, sort of the computer voice. So we definitely encourage them to kind of play around with the different voices, the speed of the voice, and try it out in different ways before sort of giving up on it, because it definitely is a very, very useful tool As I was saying, helping you get through, a ton of reading in a much more efficient way, and building that independence for a lot of students who, are struggling with their fluency. Okay, we can go on to the next.
Once you have downloaded the Read and Write extension.
So the other option, of course, for listening to information is the audiobook. So I definitely recommend this to students who are trying to get through like a very lengthy novel study for their English class. And I often say, the good thing about audiobooks is they often have, they have a real person reading to you, and often it's like a famous actor or something like that. So they can be kind of fun. There's a lot of different options for being able to access audiobooks. So actually the public libraries all have a great app called Libby that you can, just download onto your tablet, and you can access books for free that way. But there's some other options as well. So for example, there is the Center for Equitable Library Access. And that one is, sorry, 1 second there. So it's an accessible library service that basically provides books and other materials to Canadians with print disabilities. So you can register online using your library card. And educators can also register for free to access materials for their students. So it may be something that, a teacher at your child's school is able to access as well. Then there's also the ARROW, or Alternative Education Resources for Ontarians. And again, this is basically to provide alternative format text to students with perceptual disabilities who are attending public schools. So this one unfortunately has to be accessed through your child's school resource teacher. But if your child has an IEP and we know that it's affecting their reading, then they should be able to access text through this program. So that would mean being able to get things like digital textbooks that they can then use the Read Aloud tool to listen to. And then there's a number of other sort of popular audiobook formats like Audible. There's some other ones like more targeted at children, like Storynori. Lit2Go sort of focuses on classic texts, and then Scribd has just like a great variety of different texts that you can access either as digital or audiobooks. Okay, let's see what's on the next slide.
That's for me. Back to me. So we're going to talk a little bit about the dictation technology, and I know some of you out there listening have had a little experience with it perhaps, and maybe you haven't. And if you haven't, or if you haven't used it in an educational setting, you may have used it on your phone, where you're saying your email or your text, and you're speaking into the phone, and then it types for you. The cool thing about this technology at this point, as we were saying before, is that it's becoming so universal, and it's becoming built into so many different things that it doesn't really feel like assistive technology any longer. It just feels like something that everybody does. I very rarely write texts. I just speak them into my phone and off they come. Now, of course, you have to double check them, but it is available to many people, and children do see many adults using it as well. So what happens is, of course, you will write with your voice instead of writing it by hand or writing with a keyboard. Can be extremely helpful for students who have dysgraphia, have trouble forming letters, dyslexia, or any other type of reading or writing challenge. And also for kids who have a lot of ideas, but they have a difficulty getting them down onto the paper. Sometimes just speaking the ideas in sentence form or in bullet form actually helps them to get their ideas out, and then they can go back and use another set of technologies in order to edit them, refine them, etc. Okay, so let's take a look at the next slide, because this is for real. This is real life. This is a student that I assessed many, many years ago. He was in grade 5 at the time, and he was on the spectrum. So he did have Asperger's, high functioning Asperger's, and he had incredible ideas, super creative, could talk your ear off and tell you all the fine details about what he was describing. But he was there to work on his written expression, and that was a real challenge for him. Getting his ideas onto paper was really challenging. So you can see from this example that this is a grade 5 student. And if you're just looking very quickly at the letter formation, it's very challenging to read the letters. And if you look even more carefully, the spelling is even more challenging to decipher. So when I asked him, he was asked to write 5 to 7 sentences about a topic. And he chose the topic, if children ruled the world, how would it change? And of course, as soon as I gave him the topic, he exploded with ideas. But when it came time for him to write them down, this is what came out. And if you can tell what it says, I'm going to decipher for you. It says, world would end, Satan. I have to put a disclaimer that he had a very vivid imagination, so may seem a bit disturbing for some people, but these were his ideas, and we went with it. So the world would end, Satan. Economies collapsing, war, more war. Do I have it written down somewhere? I forget the last one. What's the next one? Hold on. Economies collapsing, war, more war, money worth nothing. So that's what he could do on his own. Then I said, we did an experiment. I said, let's take a look at the next slide. I said, what if you typed it, just using typing, because he was a pretty good typer. So of course, he typed it without any, there was a spell check on, but of course, unless you're typing with enough phonemic or your words, your letters meet the algorithm, and your general spelling or grammar check will pick things up. We're going to talk about that later, the differences between the two different kinds of spelling check. But a lot of his words weren't even able to be picked up by spelling check because he was missing sounds. And so the computer couldn't figure out what he was trying to say. But this is what he typed just by hand. If children ruled the world, then a dictatorship would happen immediately. People tricked into handing over their inheritances. Kids would be killing kids, drug addicts, the apocalypse could happen. Don't let kids rule the world. But the interesting thing for me as an educator was that already just by typing it, he had unlocked more information. His sentences were longer. There were more sentences. There was more detail. And then I said, and he'd never used voice to text before, what would happen? I was sharing with him, what would happen if we could just speak it and it would come out? And he was like wide-eyed, like, this is possible. Of course, this was several years ago. He's probably finished university by now, just by the way. Let's look at the next one. Next slide. One back. Here's the best part. This is the same student dictating the paragraph. If children ruled the world, the dictatorship would happen immediately, and if not immediately, very soon. Most kids would be tricked into handing over their inheritance to older kids. Kids would most likely resort to killing each other and maybe even cannibalism. Some kids would most likely find drugs and then start to abuse them. The apocalypse could happen. My version of the apocalypse is a desert wasteland with not enough food or water. So don't let kids rule the world. Now, when you put these three pieces side by side, you can see the tremendous difference, the game changer that just being able to speak his words and having it come out on the screen made for him. And truthfully, he left that session on top of the world, so excited. I have a feeling that this particular software or ability, the tool, allowed him to really show his educators and his teachers what was in his brain and how amazing his ideas were. Even if they are, they were a little apocalyptic, let's say. All right, let's move on.
Okay, so again, there's some different ways to access dictation software. So there's sort of the older programs where you sort of download them onto your computer. One of the most well-known of these is Dragon Naturally Speaking. And this program, is something where you can kind of like train it to adapt to your voice. You can control your whole computer if need be by using your voice. So it's a much more involved program if that's something that the individual needs. But then there's programs that are just like built into most computers these days, as we were saying, because it's becoming a much more accessible type of technology. So there's Mac Dictation and Microsoft Dictation that are just built into most new computers. And again, if you go to your settings, you can usually figure out how to turn that on. And then finally, there's our web-based options. So again, Read and Write has a voice typing tool built into it, which is also used by Google Docs. So if I'm in Google Docs, whether I have read and write or not, there's a voice typing tool that you can turn on. And this is the one we use most often with students. So we can go to the next slide and I'll actually show you what that looks like. So we'll see if we can get the video going this time. But we'll give you a little demo of what
Another great option for dictation without needing to purchase software is Google's voice typing. It's less sophisticated than Dragon and needs the internet to work, but it's completely free and provides an excellent resource for students. To use voice typing, you simply need to be in a Google Doc. If you have the Read and Write Chrome extension, you can access voice typing by clicking on the Speech Input button, found here. If you don't have Read and Write, you can find voice typing in the Tools menu, under Voice Typing. With either option, as soon as you click, you will see a big microphone button appear on the left side of your page. The great thing about voice typing is that there's no setup at all. You can begin dictating right away. Voice typing is a great tool because it lets me use my voice to type, period. There are many commands that Google suggests voice typing can perform, but we've had varying success using these. The more accurate and most used commands are things like comma, period, and new line. Give it a try and see how it works for you.
Okay, great. So as you can see in the demonstration there, it's quite user-friendly. So even with like younger students, it's quite easy to kind of get them set up and used to using it. You know, you still do have to work with students on making sure that they're speaking very clearly, close enough to the computer, not going too fast. So there is a little bit of a learning curve, but you know, that's the sort of thing that gets better with practice. And yeah, it's just a very accessible software that, you know, students can access from anywhere. So it's really great to use.
I would add one more thing, Victoria, before we go on, in that this is one layer. Sort of if a student, let's say a grade 7 student is writing an essay and they have to do a rough copy and then do some editing and then do a good copy. We use this tool as part of the process. It doesn't write for you. It doesn't tell you how to create a paragraph or how to create an essay, but it does allow you to get your ideas out there in a clear enough form that you can then work with them to the next level. Because of course, there will be spelling mistakes and there will be, you know, grammar errors and there will be content errors, but at least it gives you a starting place that you can go back to. And then you can use other tools, like other tools in Read and Write, the speech read back function, to read over what you've done, and you will be able to hear your errors and then go back and change them. So we are always looking at layering the assistive technology and other tools in order to get to the end product.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Ruth. And I will say too that students can use it in a variety of ways. So some students don't necessarily need to use it to compose their entire piece of writing. Like maybe they are very strong typers, but for some students, they might use it more for their brainstorming because they find that, you know, their ideas are coming out so quickly, and when they go to write them down, they lose half of what they were thinking. So if they think aloud, they can kind of capture all those jot notes and brainstorm ideas on the page, and then they can kind of work off of that to, you know, actually craft their piece of writing. For other students, they might actually use it as more of a spelling tool. So some students will hold back their vocabulary when they're writing because their spelling is challenged. But if they can kind of just turn on the tool and say the tricky word and then turn off the dictation again, they can then, you know, not be afraid to use, you know, longer, more challenging words when they're writing. So there's a variety of ways you can kind of implement it. Okay, so speaking about spelling, let's go to the next tool, which is our word prediction tool. So this is basically supporting students who, as I was saying, you know, might have a lot of trouble with spelling, and that is holding back their writing, right? They're sort of limiting their vocabulary, or they're producing less volume of work because it's just so tricky for them to figure out that spelling piece. So word prediction technology basically refers to tools that provide a list of likely word choices as the child is typing. And again, this is something most of us are becoming more familiar with. You know, most of our phones have autocomplete, right? When we're doing text messages these days. So it's that same type of technology. So it's really great for younger students who are newer to typing and may not be used to using dictation yet. And it's also great for students who struggle with motor issues or spelling, you know, in general. Let's go to the next one because we can take a look at some of the different options for word prediction. So WordQ is one of the ones that is very well known. It's been used by the TDSB. We'll take a closer look at that in the next slide. But some of the other options are like Read and Write toolbar also has a built-in word prediction. It basically has everything. And then there's some other ones like Kurzweil has it. There's different built-in keyboard options. So even using that sort of autocomplete on your iPad or that sort of thing. So a lot of different options. And there's a difference between how these different options work. So some of them work by basically suggesting a word based on the first few letters that the child has typed, while other ones will suggest more based on sort of the content. It will sort of look at what you're writing about and guess words based on the context. And then still other ones will sort of work more phonetically. So they'll look at the sounds in the words and provide suggestions based on that rather than the letters specifically. Okay, so let's take a look at the next option, or the next slide that's going to look a little bit more at the WordQ program. So we can play the video for you just to show you a little taste of what it's like.
Everyone has moments where they can't quite find the right word for the situation, and that's where WordQ can help. WordQ is a simple and efficient program that combines word prediction and text-to-speech functionality that can help you easily find the word you're looking for. WordQ adapts to learn which words you like to use, and even allows you to modify which vocabularies or topics you wish to use. Furthermore, WordQ isn't limited to just English. It can also use French, Spanish, and German to help you finish your essays, emails, or anything else you're working on.
Okay, great. Yeah, so WordQ, it doesn't have as many tools as Read and Write. However, it does have word prediction, text-to-speech, and dictation included. And because you can download it, you don't necessarily have to have an internet connection. So it can be beneficial in that way. It's available for desktop, iPads, and also now there's a Chromebook version. So there's a few different ways to access it. Let's look at the next slide, though. That is going to talk a little bit more about the option in Read and Write. So in this one, you can kind of see in the picture there, there's a tool on the toolbar. It's this little crystal ball because it's going to make the predictions for you. So if you're writing in a Google Doc, you can just click on that tool and it will open up this little text box for you. And as you can see, there's sort of a selection of words there. The student can just click on the one that they want. And the nice thing too is it will also read the word aloud for them. So they can tell like if they're picking the right one, right? Because they may not be sure if the reading is tricky. So it's a really great tool for students who are just, you know, the spelling is holding back their writing and they can sort of just use it to get through that process a little more quickly. So we'll go to the next slide and look at a couple of tools that actually we would use at the front end of writing, so the pre-writing stage. Because we know that for many students, it's actually, you know, the beginning part of writing where they're actually trying to organize their ideas. And that's where they're kind of struggling before they even get started. Or they might kind of skip over that part of the writing process and just kind of try to dive in, but then get really frustrated because they don't know where to go with it. Or, you know, they're trying to, you know, make it perfect on the first go around, but they haven't really thought through what they're doing yet. So these tools are basically programs and apps that help students brainstorm and organize their ideas. Sometimes they're known as mind mapping software or semantic webbing software is often a way they'll refer to it in the psych eds. So these tools kind of front load the work. So they allow students to kind of think through the ideas, organize all of the ideas, and they can be kind of fun as well because They're sort of colorful. The students can play around with things on the screen and sort of move the boxes around and play around with different configurations. Beyond writing, they can also be helpful for things like, projects, doing research, making study notes, annotating text. So there's a lot of different uses for them. So we'll show you a couple of the sort of best options in this category. If we just go to the next slide there. Inspiration is one of the ones that's quite well known and often recommended on psych eds. So you can see on the one hand there's sort of this very colorful mind map. We can add graphics, we can color code things, we can show how all of these ideas are interconnected. And then on the other hand, if you're working on a piece of writing, you can create an outline view. So you can look at things less in a web-like way and more in a sort of chronological type way. So helping students think about, okay, I've thought of all these different ideas, but now how do I order them in the best possible way? So inspiration is really great. It really works best on the iPad, but there is a web version as well. They aren't free though, so I will note that. One of the other things that this program doesn't have, which the next one I'll show you does, is a collaboration feature. So the next program we'll look at has the ability for two people to be in the same mind map at once, and they can work on it together. So really great for projects, and we tend to use it with our students. So let's go to the next slide and look at that one. So this is Mindomo. So really it has, I would say, most of the same features as Inspiration. Again, you can make really colorful multimedia mind maps with like hyperlinks, images, all sorts of different types of tools in there. You can be in it at the same time as somebody else, and you can both be adding to it and collaborating. It's also free, so that's lovely. Students can just sign up with an account and start using it right away. And it also has that ability to kind of convert your brainstorm into an outline view, so you can play around with sort of prioritizing and selecting the best order for your ideas. The other nice thing about, go on, Ruth. Yeah.
Veronica, just remind me how you save your information on that one. Is it saved to your own account? Yeah.
It's saved in your account. Yeah. So you create an account, and then once you're in your account, you can create as many new maps as you like. And then you can share them with people if you like. So yeah, they just get stored in the website basically. And then it also comes with a lot of different templates. So there's a lot of great templates already on there for different types of assignments, projects, essays. There's a really great like story map for students who have to kind of look at a story and break it down. So lots of really great tools already in there. Okay, let's go on to our next. Okay, so this is looking a little bit more, maybe more for those older students as well. Research tools and note-taking. So there's a lot of different apps that can support students with that sort of note-taking, taking notes for class, making notes for, research that they're doing, making notes out of their textbooks. So we'll look at a couple of different options for this. Let's go to the next slide. So Read and Write, again, has this really interesting tool where students can go onto any sort of web page and they can highlight things on the actual web page. So not only can they have the web page read to them, but they can be highlighting as they read. There's a number of different colors they can use. And so we'll show you a video here. It'll show you better than I can describe it, how that sort of works.
The highlighters in Read and Write are a fabulous way for students to stay organized while completing research. We often suggest that students choose a color for each idea that they may have or are trying to prove. As they go through the article, they can highlight based on those colors. And I'll show you how it's done. So first, we select the text that we want to highlight and then choose a color. It's very simple. You can imagine that these are all different ideas. And lastly, I'm going to do this one green again so you can see what happens when I collect them. So the collect highlighting tool is right here, and you simply click on it, and you can choose to sort the highlights by color or position. I'm going to do color today. You can also choose which colors to collect. So if you wanted these in different documents, you could do so. Once you hit OK, a Google Doc is going to be created for you with your highlights collected, the URL for the website so that you can always access it in order to create your bibliography, and the account with which it's placed this document. So it goes within the Google Drive of this account. As you'll notice, my 2 green highlights have been lumped together. So if those were both about one idea, I'd be able to easily access that information.
Okay, great. So as you can see there, yeah, this tool is really great for sort of organizing information for students. The other great thing is that when it extracts those highlights into the Google Doc, it actually is going to also give them a hyperlink back to the website where they found it. So if you're finding, your child is sort of collecting information for, their research project, and then kind of forgetting where it came from, this tool is going to help with that. And then when they need to go back and make that bibliography or that works cited list, they can sort of look back and remember where they got the information from. So a really great tool for sort of, organizing research notes, summarizing, even if you just want to read through an article and find the important information, great for all those sorts of tasks.
Victoria,
okay, let's look at it. Yeah.
Vista says, mind blown, ... And I totally agree.
Most of the students, when we show them this tool, are just like, where has this been my whole life? So yeah, really, really great tool. Let's look at the next slide there, which is also another one of my personal, oops. So one of my personal favorites is Notability. There's these really fantastic kind of all-in-one note-taking software that exists these days that I really wish I had when I was a student. So they're really these multimedia type software. Notability is the one if you are using a Mac. Unfortunately, there isn't a PC version of it. But OneNote would be sort of the equivalent, coming from the Microsoft suite of programs. So both of these programs are really great because students can kind of use them like a virtual notebook. They can create sort of like tabs within the program, and then they can store all of their like class notes, readings, research that they're gathering. So you basically create all these like tabs and then sub tabs within the tabs. So it's really great for organizing everything in one place. And then within that, you can create these sort of multimedia notes. So you can see in the image there that, there are drawing tools, there are highlighters, you can add images, hyperlinks, voice notes, all sorts of things. So you can either like open up a blank document and just kind of start typing if you're, taking notes in class, or you can import an article or a PDF that you're working on, and you can sort of be annotating and writing on top of it. So really, really great program. And one thing that Notability has just recently added, which is so great for university students, is it now has a recording feature. So they can actually press record in their lecture as they're sort of listening to the notes and adding their own notes. And when they play it back, it will show them what they were typing at the time that, the professor is talking. So it's a great way to sort of like replay what happened in the lecture, review everything, add to the notes later if you need to. So yeah, these programs are really fantastic. I definitely recommend them for sort of upper high school and post-secondary students. So yeah, Notability and OneNote, really great ones. There's a couple of other ones as well that, work with that sort of idea of recording things for you. So Otter is a program that will sort of record and take meeting notes for you in real time. So you can just kind of focus on listening. So that's a great one as well. And then the LiveScribe pen is, if you prefer sort of handwriting to typing, the LiveScribe pen it's a real pen, but then it will also record the lecture for you as you're listening. And anything that you write in your notebook, it's a special kind of paper, and that paper will then actually transmit the information to your computer. So you can kind of save your handwritten notes digitally, and also have a recording that goes with them. So really, really great options for those older students. Okay, let's look at the next slide. So one more category we might want to consider, especially for those sort of high school kids, is the bibliography generators. Again, one I really wish I had had when I was younger and I was doing everything manually. So, many students are already aware of these, but just knowing that you can go into these sites, you can tell it what type of citation style you need to use, whether it's MLA or APA or Chicago style, what type of a source you're using, and it will help you create that citation to put into your paper. The one thing I will say is we do want students to kind of still have an understanding of, why we're citing these things, what the citation is used for. Like, we still want them to sort of understand what it is all about, so that they're not just kind of, throwing things in and hoping for the best. So we still want to talk through it a little bit so that they know, that they're doing it properly. Okay, let's go on to the next category. I think, Ruth, this one's over to you.
That's me. So somebody asked if we were going to have a recording of this, and I just want to rest assured, I know we're throwing a lot of information at you, and yes, you will not only get a recording, but you'll also get a lovely handout with a whole bunch of information for each of these types of software and technologies, with more details. So hang tight for that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the executive functioning technology. And I know that somebody had sent in a question ahead of time asking specifically about tech tools or assistive technology tools for executive functions. And there are many out there. I'm going to focus on something that is about focus, which is helping to keep students on track and keeping their information, keeping on task is really the thing that we're looking at first. So one of the things that we know that anxiety and procrastination definitely go hand in hand. So when we're feeling anxious about something because either we don't know what we're supposed to do or we don't feel confident enough that we can do it, we will often get distracted and procrastinate and do other things. But there are many different technologies that can help with organization of things. So Notability and OneNote would be one of them. Time management. We'll talk a little bit about calendars in a moment, as well as keeping that focus or your sustained attention and task initiation. There are built-ins like guided access for iPad and digital well-being settings for Android. So those are things that will help you stay on task. And I'm going to show you, if you move on to the next slide, I'll show you two that we like to recommend. Next slide. So here are two. One is called Forest and the other one is called Stay Focused. And Forest allows you to set a certain amount of time that you're going to focus for. So it's almost like it counts down and you say, I'm going to set it for 25 minutes. I'm going to do my work for 25 minutes. There is a technique for time management called the Pomodoro method, just like the tomato. And the Pomodoro method tells us that we work for 25 minutes and we have a 5-minute break. And then we work for another 25 minutes and then another 5-minute break. Or you work for 50 minutes and then you have a 10-minute break. And you can do a few sets of these in order to keep your brain primed and stay on task, but you still know that your break is coming up. So something like Forest allows you to set your timer. And then if you make it through the session, you get a virtual tree to add to your growing forest, and you get to see how your forest is growing the more you are focused. So it's a little bit of an incentive that way. The other side of the coin is Stay Focused, in which case it blocks out certain websites so that you restrict yourself from going on certain sites and the amount of time that you can spend on those time-wasting websites. So if you set, let's say I want to be on Facebook for 45 minutes for the day, once you've used up your 45 minutes, that's it, you're cut out. Of course, I mean, We all know how to get around these things, but at least it's an initial way to help us remind ourselves that we shouldn't be on those particular sites for too long a time. Okay, let's look at the next one. Back to you.
Okay, so this is a one that's become quite a favorite among our students this year. This is Trello. So this is basically a tool that helps you organize yourself, organize all the different things you have on your plate. And there's basically different ways you can kind of view the information. So the most common one is what they call a Kanban board, where you have these sort of columns. The columns have different cards on them. So usually I have students sort of have one column for each of their classes. And then as new assignments are handed out, they can add them to the board. The great thing too is it's collaborative. So, you know, you can be on the same board as your child and see what's going on. You know, you can kind of share information if there's things you're both working on or things you both need to know, you can share it. And then the other thing is you can also turn this into like a calendar view. So I usually say to students, you know, we want to have kind of our, you know, what I need to do today priority list, but then we also want to have the longer term view. So I can also turn this into sort of a weekly or monthly calendar view. And there's a lot of just great tools you can add to it. So, you know, of course, you can add things like due dates, there's color coding. You can actually like upload the assignment handouts to the card when you create it. You can even set this little countdown timer. This is when some students find this a bit anxiety inducing, but some students like it, that there's a little countdown timer and it will tell you how many days and hours you have left until something is due. So it can be a bit of an incentive for some students. So that's a really great one we use for organization, but you know, there's many organization apps and tools out there. So we often explore different options with students, and then we'll talk with them about setting up like a personalized system. And we want them to sort of help make the choices for that so that they're on board with it. They've helped select something that they want to try out. Okay, let's take a look at the next one.
That's for me. So we're going to talk about timers and reminders. And before talking about reminders, before I forget, I want to say that if you are looking for more information on executive functions and assistive technology for executive functions, we did a whole other webinar. Some of you may have been there. You could put in the chat if you saw that one too. But if you go into our, on our website, on our YouTube channel, we have all of our webinars recorded. You can always find them there. So if you're interested in more information about executive functions, check that out. Because again, it's another whole treasure trove of information. So timers and reminders, again, you know, there are things you can program on your phone. You can get your computer to beep at you when you need something. But then there's some also more advanced timers and reminders. And a visual timer I find really helpful for kids who have a difficult time understanding time in general. So a lot of our students that are diagnosed with ADHD have a difficulty understanding what time actually is and how long something will take, or how long something should take, or how long they have. If you say to them, we'll be done in 5 minutes, it's very hard for them to get an understanding of that. So the picture in the middle with the red dial, that is a visual timer. And that actually counts backwards from, let's say you're setting it for 40 minutes, and you can actually see the red section shrinking. And it's really helpful for kids if they have a difficult time figuring out how long they have to stay focused, or if just understanding how long even 5 or 10 minutes might be. So the visual timer is really helpful. And just as an aside, when we talk about executive functions, something like this type of visual timer, which you can not only get online, but you can also get it in an actual clock. And so you set the dial for the 40 minutes and then you watch that time move, can be a life changer for getting kids out the door or completing tasks or getting ready for bed. I know many of our teachers, and myself included, I've used it in my home for my kids, and it's been really helpful to get them to be aware of not wasting the time and still getting through the tasks that they need to complete. Another fun thing is the picture of the watch, which is actually a vibrating watch. So not only will it beep, but it will also give you a tactile reminder, so you feel it on your body. And it's very helpful for students with focus and attention issues, and it helps to keep them, again, on task. You may set the alarm for 10 minutes and remind them in 10 minutes that they should be still finishing the task, or giving them messages, or taking their medication, or whatever it needs to be. What's next?
Okay, so we can't forget about math, of course. So yes, there are also tools to support students with dysgraphia or other types of challenges with math. Because, you know, for many students, right, doing math on the page can be very laborious, or, you know, they may find that their writing is messy and they're kind of losing the numbers, and then their calculations are off. So these apps are meant to help with that. So the first one you'll see there is ModMath. It's a free iPad app that helps students with dyslexia and dysgraphia do math questions. And basically, the students will use their keypad to write their math equations within the cells of this kind of virtual graph paper. And there's sort of all different types of formulas that have already been programmed into the app. So you can just kind of call up the formula you need, and then you can plug in the numbers and you can do your calculations, and everything will be neat and tidy and easy for your teacher to read. The other one up there is Equatio. So this is created by TextHelp, which is the same company that creates the Read and Write program. So this is kind of the math equivalent to that. And it's really great. It provides a lot of different ways to kind of get math on the page digitally. So students can type things, they can dictate. There's sort of like formulas already in there that they can, again, just like bring up the formula and then plug the numbers in to do their calculations. So it's really, really great resource. There's also a drawing tool. So if they find, you know, maybe it's easier if they're working on the iPad, they can sort of just draw out what they want, and then it will actually convert into typed text, so it's easier to read later. So yeah, lots of great things. Geometry tools also built in there, all sorts of virtual manipulatives. It's a really impressive program. It takes a little bit of training to use it and to get used to all the different tools, but once you know how to use it, I think it can be a lifesaver for students who just find that doing math on paper is really laborious for them. Okay, let's go on to our next one.
Oh yes, this is really exciting because Victoria actually found this for us in her research, in her digging. It's called the AT Select, and it is a tool, an online tool. We put the atselect.org website on there so you can find it yourself. Basically, it shows you all of the academic domains, math, writing, motor, organization, all the way through. And when you click on one of those initial boxes, you will then be taken to the second box that you see. Let's say we clicked on writing, and you see then that writing is broken down into many, many different categories, all with subcategories and subcategories of the subcategories. So when you click on each of those boxes, when you sort of follow the flow chart to the end, you'll be given a list of different technology that is available to students and more information about that. So that is from, it's a free website, and it just sort of takes you on the path. One of the things that there are two things about this that come to mind. One, it's like, that is so cool that somebody has actually categorized all of these different domains, and then taken each domain and broken it down into its smaller parts, and then given some suggestions for each one of them. The thing that I think may be difficult or overwhelming is that you can see how many subparts there are, and it may be overwhelming to students and to parents to figure out what is best for that particular child. So that's where we come in. And if you are having difficulty figuring out what is going to be best for your child, or what is, you know, what their needs actually are based on their either learning profile or their personality or the challenges that they're having at school, our teachers and our specialists are really very well equipped and very well versed in all of these different technologies and how to piece together a program that's going to work for that particular child. I think we can look at the next slide. We do provide individualized AT lessons, and we build a course specifically for that child's needs. It's a little bit different than working on an academic skill, like a reading skill or a writing skill, which we all are also experts in. But in this case, we usually take a small number of hours, maybe 3 hours or 6-hour package, in order to give an overview of, what is the technology that's going to work best. Bye, Julie. I see you're signing off, but thank you. We're coming to the end. I know we're a little bit over time, but any questions that you have, I'm going to open it up in just a moment so that we can take your questions, and Victoria and I are going to stick around for a bit. If you do have to leave, thank you so much for joining us, and just know that we are available to answer any questions at any time. You can always reach us through ruthrumack.com or info@ruthrumack.com. And at this point, I think we will open up the chat. If you have, I'd love to hear actually your comments on tonight. What is the one thing or two things or five things that you got out of the presentation? It's always helpful for us to know what people are interested in and what's meaningful to them. So if you have a chance, throw some things in the chat for us. I'm going to look at some questions. I know Sheila asked, is Equatio approved for TDSB? Victoria.
Yeah, that's something I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. So both Read and Write and Equatio are, they very much being promoted to teachers, and they are free for teachers to use and access. And TDSB certainly uses Read and Write very liberally. I'm just not sure. To be honest, I find the math, I think maybe they're lagging behind a little bit in terms of accessing the assistive tech. But, I think it's worth talking to, the special ed department at your child's school to see if that is something that could be implemented. Because if the student can do their math, in a Google Doc and submit it through Google Classroom to the teacher, I don't see why that's something that couldn't be arranged with the teacher. So I think it's worth having that conversation for sure.
I would say, whether it's officially approved at TDSB or not, if you have a relationship with the math teacher or the special ed teacher, I would just go back and say, we would like to try this and do an experiment and see how it goes. Of course, as Victoria was saying, the Equatio, it takes a little bit of time. You have to know how to access all the pieces and how you're going to use it. But with training, it's something that can be quite invaluable, especially for those kids who have difficulty lining things up on the page, or where their handwriting is illegible and they can't even read their own writing, let alone the teacher reading their writing. I was also going to say, well, let's go back to some of our comments and questions. Let's just see. Okay.
Oh, I was asking about homework. Do we work with students on homework? We certainly do. Usually there's a combination of sort of skill building, right? Teaching new skills to them, and then also supporting that in the context of real schoolwork. So, every student's programming is different because it is all customized to the student. But yes, we can certainly support students with their homework assignments and show them, new skills that will help, make the homework that much easier.
I think that's the best way to do it, really, is when it is a combination. So we're not just throwing information at a student, we're actually applying it to the work that they're doing, and they buy in faster because they can see that it's actually helpful and more efficient, and it allows them to get through their homework faster. And then as we're building their confidence and we're building their skills, then we're going to introduce something else, that's also going to add to their toolbox. So it's a process, not just, a one size fits all or, one and done. All right, let's take a look. Kate says, looking forward to playing around with Read and Write. Oh my gosh, you could spend really hours playing around with Read and Write. There are so many little features. But again, we don't want our students to get overwhelmed. We want to introduce one or two things that are going to be beneficial for them right away so that they're going to feel successful. Building success is key. And when you can build success one layer at a time, then, when you've mastered that particular skill and you can see that they're using it seamlessly, then you add on the next piece, or you wait for the next challenge and you figure out what is it that, what can we do to solve this next challenge. Excellent. Does anybody else, I see one more message hanging out. If anybody else,
virtual tutor.
Yes, yes. So thanks to the pandemic, we have been, online and doing some really incredible things online with all kinds of technological tools, I would say, that keep our lessons really engaging and interesting and interactive. And, when we're in person, which we are now also back in person, and we're continuing to do the virtual, we try and make them as active and multisensory and multimodal as possible. And so when we switched to pandemic teaching, it took us a couple of weeks to kind of figure out the groove of how we were going to take all of that hands-on, very personalized and interactive work and transfer it to the screen. But I have to say, we've been extremely successful. And, we've had students who've joined us in the virtual arena that have never met us in person and that don't plan on meeting us in person. They're just going to continue working virtually, regardless of if they're able to come in or not. So definitely available virtually, which is great because we can see anyone from anywhere in the world at any time. Any other questions or comments? Katrin says, thank you. There have been so many tools I've never even thought about being beneficial. These will give us power to go back to our certs, to add some of these to our learning tools. Fabulous. That's what we wanted, right? We want to give you something that you can take with you and say, hey, let's try this. And like we said, try it a few times, try it a few more times. You've got to kind of figure out the nuances of it. And we have to get the kids excited about it to get their buy-in. All right. Anybody else? Well, we will stick around for a few minutes afterwards, but if you need to leave, and we just hope that you take some of these tools and apply them, play around with them, have fun with them. And if there's anything that we can do, we can be reached at www.ruthrumack.com, rumack.com. Victoria, maybe you want to put that in the chat. And also info@ruthrumack.com is our direct email, and our client services team would be happy to answer your questions and then set you up with one of our associate directors of education. Maybe you will even talk to Victoria, and Victoria or one of her colleagues will walk you through our process and get you started. And we really look forward to speaking with you and to being in touch. Don't forget about our other webinars throughout the year. We do a series of webinars throughout the year. All of that's listed on our website as well under webinars. And we have, I can't remember which one is coming up next because I do a bunch of them. Maybe Joelle can throw that in the chat, or Victoria can. Oh, executive functioning is next on March 10th. Look at that. That's perfect. Don't watch the rerun. Don't watch an old one. Come and join us again on March 10th. And if you have to sign off now, thanks again for coming, and we will see you soon. All right, let's look at Vista said, oh, Katrin says, oh, yay. I love that. Yes, join us. Okay, Vista. I was attending a psychoeducational consultant, and this was incredibly helpful in summarizing all the assistive technologies. Thank you so much. Well, thank you, Vista, for joining us and for commenting too. I'm glad that we blew your mind. So happy about that. Thank you, Lisa says, so much for the generosity of your time and expertise. Oh, my pleasure. It really is our pleasure to share what we know. And this is, truthfully, this is like the tip of the iceberg. So if we had 3 hours to talk or 6 hours to talk, we would barely come up for air. There's just so much out there. Anything else? Anybody else? If you wanted to come off of mute, just put it in the chat and we can actually have a chat if you like. I'm good. We have a couple of people who are hanging around. Let's see who's hanging around. If April or Katrin or Simone, if you have any questions, let me know. You can put it in the chat, or you can ask to come off mute and we can talk like humans. Like live humans. Victoria, is there anything else you wanted to share? Said a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I think we covered a lot. I think, yeah, I think it might be helpful for some people to go back to their child's psych ed now and take another look and see what was listed in the resources. And now you can look at it with fresh eyes and fresh understanding of what those tools actually are.
That's a good one.
And yeah, if you have any further questions, give us a call and we can further chat through the different options that might be best for your child.
That's fabulous. Well, thank you. Thanks, Victoria, for hanging out with me this evening. I appreciate that. And we will sign off and hopefully see everybody on March 10th for our executive functioning webinar. See you.
Have a great night.